Welcome everyone to our Facebook Live today. Today I am going to be going over stuffed animals. I'm Nancy Bronstein. I am a PFAFF educator, and we recently had our first grandchild, so I'm all about baby clothes and toys and Minky and books, baby books, and all that kind of stuff now. So today what I'm going to do is I am going to, first of all, give you some general hints on stuffed animal construction and things like that. Then we're going to go into making a bunny in the hoop, and I'll show you the bunny. So this is the bunny, and the bunny has a nice little apron on. That's also one of the embroidery designs that come with him or her. I'm not sure yet if it's a him or a her. And I'm going to show you how to construct this bunny, how to find the design, and we'll hopefully have a good time and you'll be inspired to make a bunny as well. Now, if you have our software, you could always use the in the hoop design and just alter it, take it into the digitizing module and change the face a little bit. Maybe instead of floppy ears, it has little ears that stick up and you've got a monkey. So you could really make a variety of different animals, but we're going to stick with the bunny today. So in general, the first thing you should do is you need to know who this stuffed animal is for, because if it's for a very small child, under 3 or 4, say, you probably want to stay away from using buttons as a embellishment or as eyes or a nose, because they are choking hazards. So that's where embroidery comes in really handy, because you can make these nice features with embroidery, and they are totally safe for a baby or a toddler. You don't have any choking hazards. And you also want to think about the fabric that you're using, if it's suitable for the recipient. And also you want to think about how that stuffed animal is going to be used based on who it's going to, because when I went to buy fabric, I wanted something that was furry like this. And there were some that there was a variety of different colors and different sort of furry patterns. Some, when you looked at the label, were dry clean only. I stayed away from those. I, in general, try to stay away from dry cleaning anything. But, your stuffed animal, unless it's going to sit on a shelf, is going to be loved and get dirty. And if it is a gift for a child, the mother's going to appreciate if they can put it in the washing machine. So I would stay away from the dry clean only. The other thing to look for is if you're going to do a furry animal like this, you want to pay attention to the nap of the fur. And when you construct the animal, you want all the nap going the same way. This particular fur, I don't know if you can see it, is actually just swirls. So it goes either way. It doesn't really matter if I put it this way or that way. It is fine, which is nice when you're making at least your first bunny, that you don't have to worry about nap. Then besides the fabric, another thing to think about is how are you going to stuff it, and what are you going to stuff it with? So in my knowledge, there's basically 3 types of stuffings that are generally used. The most common one is your basic polyfill that probably all of you are familiar with. It's polyester, and it looks kind of like this. And I've made zillions of pillows with this. Then if you want to go up a step, there is another polyester product, but it will have silk in the name, although it's polyester. But it has a very silky, almost down-like feel to it, and it's really soft. I would assume that most high-end stuffed animals are probably stuffed with this silky stuff, as opposed to the usual polyfill. And there are a number of different brands that make it. So it's not hard to find. It is more expensive than the typical polyfill. Then the third thing to consider is if you are going to make a stuffed animal and you want that animal to sit on a shelf, sit upright, erect, and not flop over, you might want to consider using poly pellets. They are little tiny pellets, little tiny plastic pellets, and they are not for small children, however, because there is a choking hazard. They're pretty tiny, but right on the bag it says choking hazard, small parts not for children under 3. But if this stuffed animal is for an older child, you could use this if you do want it to sit upright. I would really reinforce the seams of the body. You would typically put this in the body, and then the arms would be a softer stuffing of some kind. And for the body part, I would really, double stitch the seams, or even consider making an inner lining out of muslin, the shape of the body, and making kind of like a bag within the body to hold the pellets in place, because you don't want those getting out and spilling all over the place, because that would be a mess. But they do weight the stuffed animal down so that it sits up really nicely. So it's worth investigating if it's for an older child. Then when you're doing the embroidery, you are, of course, going to need to use stabilizer. And for the body of the stuffed animal, you can just use tearaway, which is readily available. There are parts of the project that you will want to use a water-soluble stabilizer. I used Aqua Magic. And depending upon the stabilizer that you have, you might want to use 2 layers of the water soluble, but because it's going to have to pierce through the fur, and might if it's a very thin water soluble, it might not be up to the task. Now, also when I did his face, I put a layer of water soluble over the top of the fur, so that the features would not sink right into the fur quite as much. So they would be more on the surface. So we'll show you his little face here. So those are the supplies you need, except you will also need, of course, embroidery thread for your project. And if you want to make this little apron, you would need a piece of fabric as well. With the pattern or the design collection that this bunny is from, there are some other clothing and accessories that are included that I will show you. And those you would need other fabrics and stabilizer, which water-soluble stabilizer, which I will mention when I get to that point. Okay, so let's launch into the actual In the Hoop project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to find the project. So for those of you who may not be aware, we at PFAFF has a subscription embroidery service, embroidery library rather, that is available to anyone who wants to either have a subscription to the library, or they want to purchase individual designs. And it is online. It's available 24/7. There's over 8,000 designs in there right now, and they're adding more all the time. So that's where this collection can be purchased, and I'm going to show you how to find it. So first I'm going to go change my view and go to my browser here. So what I have open here is mysonet.com. So if you look at the address bar at the top, it's mysonet.com. And when I get there, there is in the toolbar at the top, there is one choice that says library. And if we click on library, you'll get a drop down, and you can search the library with starting with just what's new, or all designs, or different categories. So you can sort of organize what you're searching for right out of the gate. So I'm going to just touch all designs. And when you get there at the top, it will tell you how many designs there currently are in the library, which is 8,052. And what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a project that is an in the hoop project. So what you'll see first when you open up the library are all the newest designs that have been added. These were added recently. These roses are appliques that are absolutely beautiful once they are stitched out. So just looking at this first rose, so you get the lay of the land, so to speak, if you've never looked at the library, there is an icon right below the rose that has a paper airplane. If I were to touch that and I have a subscription to the library, it would send that design right to my embroidery machine or to my computer. If I don't have the design, I can touch on the shopping cart, and then it will allow me to purchase the design individually. And you will get a choice of what format. So if you have a machine that likes a particular format that's different than PFAFF, it will be there, and you can choose that format. So to find our in the hoop projects, we go over to the left and open up categories and scroll down. Now you would think it would be in the hoop, but it's actually projects in the hoop. So I'm going to check that. And there are 279 designs associated with projects in the hoop in the library. And I want to narrow that down to my bunny. So I'm going to go up to the search field at the top and type in bunny, and then touch the search icon. And now I have 17 results for bunny. Now, the bunny itself, to just make the stuffed animal, it doesn't take 17 different pieces. There are a bunch of extra things in here, accessories and so on. And I'll scroll down and talk about them a little bit. This bunny face on the right with the purple outline, that actually is kind of a search artifact. That is indeed a bunny project in the hoop, but not our bunny project in the hoop, but it's kind of cute. So I'll just show it to you. So this is to make a bib, but also to learn how to stitch this design instruction booklet. So you can get it to make these cute towels for kids. I don't know, you call it a towel poncho, and some toys and these bibs. But that's not our project. So I'm going to go back. It was found by search because it is a project in the hoop and it is a bunny, but it's not for us. But when we go down a little bit further, the rest of this stuff is for our project, but some of it we will not be doing today. These lace designs are to make either clothes or a basket for the bunny, and we're not going to have time to go into doing that. But if you do want to do those lace designs, you will need a lot more water-soluble stabilizer. So if we decide to do this project, what you would do, or if you decide to do this project, because we are definitely doing this project, you would need to download all of basically the body parts, the ears, the feet, the arms, and so on. And you do it either by touching the paper airplane or by touching the shopping cart to load it. Now, the very first design here is a heart, and you could definitely download that if you like. However, the person who designed this project, she has you stitch it out and then stick it inside of the bunny with the stuffing, so it has a heart, but nobody's going to see it. So I kind of skipped over that part. But I do want to show you how to find the instructions when you do go to make this project. I am going to go over everything, but if you do decide to make the bunny, you're definitely going to want these instructions. So if you touch any of the body part designs, I'm going to touch the ears. that design will open up, and you'll see on the side some examples of what you can do with the designs. And then to the right of the bunny pictures, there's a link that says learn how to stitch this design. Now that will open up the instructions, but I also, before I go off this page, I wanted to just also mention the next link in red, the paper airplane. That will send it to your embroidery machine if you have one of our Wi-Fi enabled machines. You do need to be logged into your wireless at home on your machine. Hopefully you have a Creative Icon too, like I do. Or the Creative Icon also is a Wi-Fi enabled machine. And you need to be logged into your MySonet account. And then it will find, when you touch this link here where it says send to MySonet enabled device, the interface will find your icon and send the design right over there, if you have the subscription for the library. If you don't, and you add to the cart, you'll send it later. If you want to save this design on your machine for later usage, you can click on upload to MySonet Cloud. But now I'm going to touch the link that says learn how to stitch this design. And then instruction PDF. And here we go. Here's our Be My Bunny with Endless Embroideries. And this is our project in the library. And since I'm hoping a lot of you will make this bunny and enjoy making it, I am going to go over the instructions because I myself found them a little bit like buying something at IKEA, like I could figure it out, but sometimes it wasn't quite as clear what I should do next. But actually, after I made the very first one, it was very, very clear what was going on, and the second one was a lot faster. So I'm just going to save you some time. So in the very beginning, there are these pictures to give you some instructions. Basically, I think they try to make these instructions so that no matter what your native language is, you know what to do. So they are recommending heavyweight water soluble, and they're showing you how to melt away the water soluble when you're done. I also will cut away any water soluble before I put it in water to dissolve it, just to get rid of as much of it as I can. And another thing that I'll do too, I try to avoid getting my projects wet. If I can cut away 99% of it, then I can take a wet Q-tip and dab the little edges and get rid of that, probably the last little bit. Like when I made the bunny face, I got all the water soluble off by cutting and by using the Q-tip. So I didn't need to dip the bunny in water for the face or for the apron. So going back here, the next category where they have the flower pot and this circular design, what they're showing you there is that for the bunny itself, they have added this technique to have the eyelashes kind of stick up. And if you've ever done fringe flowers in embroidery, it's the same sort of idea. I'm going to see if I can bring this one up real close to the camera so you can see it. Maybe you see both eyes. And if I can get it in there just right, you can kind of see that there are fringy eyelashes there, which is kind of a nice touch. And the way that you make the fringe is it's a special embroidery technique that makes these very large satin stitches. And on the wrong side of the fabric, if you look at the circular embroidery design that's in the middle one of the two, this is the back side of your fabric. So you're going to trim the bobbin thread And then with something sharp on the right side, you pull the eyelashes up so they come out and they stick out. So maybe I can demo that a little bit better. If you have the Icon or Icon 2, there is a tutorial on Fringe flowers. They are beautiful. It's a really beautiful technique. Actually, I think I have something here. I do. So here is a Japanese knot bag that I made this week. And here is a Fringe flower right here. So they're really very dimensional. Let's see if I can get this so you can see it really well in the camera. So that it's a really cool technique, having the embroidery thread stick up like that. And that's the idea behind the eyelashes. So this is a face that has not been, put together to make a head. And what I did on the back side is I trimmed the bobbin thread that created the eyelash, and then got like a stylus to pull the eyelashes out. And you can kind of see how they stick up a little bit. And if you felt like you wanted to make the eyes stick out more, you could trim some of this fur around here so the eyes would really pop even a little bit more. But I kind of like the way it looks like that. So that's that second row of kind of cryptic designs there. Now the third row with the pop-up embroidery, that really is part of the lace designs that we're not going to do today. So we don't have to worry about that. Now the fourth row it says applique, that is the way that the designer has set up all the body parts. So it sounds like sort of morbid when I call them body parts, but arms, legs, body, head, that sort of thing. Let's see. I have a request from one of the people assisting me that I should ask if anyone has any questions. So at any time, there are 3 people that are assisting me in another location, and they are happy to flip your questions over to me, and I can stop at any time and explain anything that I have not gone over clearly enough. Or if you have any questions associated with what I'm doing, I'm happy to stop and do that. So don't hesitate to ask a question. So as I was saying, the fourth row where it says applique, that is the way that the body part designs are done. What I mean by that is the first row of stitches will be onto your stabilizer to create the outline of the object, the foot, the arm, the head, whatever it is. Then your design will stop, and you'll put your fabric down over that design. That's what the second panel is showing. Then it will stitch that down, and it will stop for you to cut the extra fabric off. So it's very typical applique type of procedure. Then the next 2 rows are about the lace that we are not doing. So just to sort of go over this a little bit more, with each body part, you will see as you scroll down, you will see the colors on the left. And the first color represents where the design will just stitch a circle basically for the head. Then for an outline, you will then place the fabric down, and then it will stitch that down. In fact, I'm going to show you on my Creative Icon 2, because I think it'll be clearer if I do that. So this is the interface of my Creative Icon 2 when it opens up. If I go to embroidery, I have my designs inside here. I'm going to load the face. So that's our face. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit, maybe. Not quite that much. Okay, so there's the design. So I'm going to touch go to the stitch out portion and show you or give you one big hint. So most of you probably have an embroidery machine where when you load your design, you will see your embroidery on the screen. Having a big screen is a huge advantage, particularly if you want to combine designs or add fonts or make other creative choices. But also when you want to just see all the details of the design. So an added benefit of the Creative Icon and many of our PFAFF embroidery machines, if not all, is that we have this function called ghost mode. Right now, you're seeing all the different stitches that make the face. But if I touch ghost mode, what it shows me is just what's going to stitch next. And I think that particularly with this project, given the way the instructions are written, having ghost mode on is a huge advantage. So you can see what's going to stitch next. Now, when I stitched out my first bunny and also the second one, I put multiple body parts on one hoop. I'll show you what I mean. I have to come up with a different name besides body parts. It sounds so morbid. Anyway, go back over here. So when I stitched mine out, you basically are going to use whatever hoops that you have, because you have I think it's like 5 or 6 different parts. Let's see. You have arms, you have legs, you have the bottom of the feet, you have the body front and back, and the head front and back, and 2 ears. So you have a number of parts. And so depending on what size hoops you have, you can combine them. You just need to keep in mind if it's going to be one layer of your furry material, or it's going to be 2 layers sewn together eventually. So on the left here, I have the white furry fabric, and I'm doing the ears, so that the ears are a 2-step process, so that you're putting the lining of the ears on top of the furry material. On the right, I have the face. I have the back of the face up above it, back of the head. And then I have the back side of the bunny with the tail. And I also added a little label that says "Made with Love by Grandma Nancy." And I'm going to show you how to add a label if you want to do that on your project. So because I'm adding, I tried to conserve stabilizer and get as many of the different parts onto one hoop. Having ghost mode really helped. So I'm going to go back to ghost mode here. So because I was putting different designs on one hoop, I wanted ghost mode so I would know that this first band of color, basically what that does is it creates the outline on your stabilizer. I put down a solid piece of fur, so it would cover any design that was going to be in the hoop. So I just did that on the fur, and then the next one on the fur as well. It just ended up that the stitches up here were a little bit thicker, but it made it a little bit easier to see in the fur. Didn't affect anything. So you may be wondering what these triangles are. Those are stitch guides, so that once the face is done, these are darts that will give the face some dimension, so it's not just completely flat. Then when we go up to the next step, after we have stitched this pattern onto the white fur, the next step is going to be the start of the nose and the mouth. Now, if you look at the picture of the bunny nose could be an applique, or it could be just embroidery. So this is the first part. This is stitching out the outline of the nose. Then the next band of color is going to stitch down any fabric you put there as an applique. And then the next one, after you trim around it, would finish off that applique. And I'll show you what I mean. So For my first bunny, my brown bunny, I really didn't know what was going on with the nose so well, so I did the nose without any applique. It looks fine. Then with my soon-to-be white bunny, here's the bunny face, I used some black vinyl, and I do like that nose a lot better than having the nose, just the furry background, but it's up to you. Those 3 steps are typical of applique that, you know, it will, the first step, it's going to give you the outline, then it's going to stop for you to put your applique fabric down. It'll stitch it down, it'll stop for you to cut around the applique fabric, and then the last step is it's going to do the finishing stitch, the satin stitch, to finish off the nose so it looks really nice. So that's the face. And let's talk, we might as well talk about the ears, since we have the ears here in this picture here. So both of the arms, the legs, and the ears are 2 layers, and they are turned, after they're stitched, they're turned right side out and stuffed. So I'll show you actually what they look like here. So let me find my ears. Now the ears aren't stuffed, but they are turned right side out. So the first step in doing the ears is you have your piece of furry fabric, and then you're going to place the lining fabric, or the inside of the ear fabric, right sides together onto the furry fabric. And it's nice to have something a little soft, you know, like this is a fleece, but you could use velvet. Velvet would be really nice. I didn't have any velvet. And after it's all stitched out, you have something that looks like this. And then you're going to turn it and right sides out. And the ears, so then you get this nice, you know, soft bunny ear. The bunny ears are not stuffed. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to, but the directions do not call for that. But then once you have your ear done, you are going to curl the end in so that when you put it on your bunny, it looks, you know, looks like a bunny ear. It's kind of folded in. I'll do that when I get to the putting the head together part. So those are the ears. And then the next thing would be to show you the feet. So the feet, or legs, actually, the legs and the feet. The legs and the feet are in 2 pieces. So you've got the leg, which has the thigh and the top of the foot, and then you have the sole of the bunnies, the sole of their foot. And you could do this in fur, you could do it, I did it in vinyl and some felt for the brown bunny. And then for my white bunny, I did some white vinyl and black vinyl to do the bottom of the feet that I haven't sewn in together yet. When you put together the feet, actually I'm going to load that file so you can see what it looks like on the Creative Icon. So let's go back and get rid of the face file. So by the way, with this big screen, you know, I was able to combine all those files and see that they fit. So that's something that is really nice, having this big screen. So I'm going to load the bunny leg file. And I need to use a bigger hoop. So there's the bunny legs. And the way that they are going to stitch out is basically you're going to put 1 layer of fur right side up, and then another layer for right side down, and it's going to do this stitching. And when you take it out of the hoop, this row, this outer row of stitching is your cut line, and you are going to cut across the bottom. So then you end up with something that looks like this. This is the wrong side of the furry fabric. So then we turn it right sides out. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, when you use this type of fabric, be prepared for a bit of a mess. Even after I've already sewn it, I'm having little pieces coming off a little bit from the raw edge. So have your vacuum cleaner nearby and probably a lint roller. It is kind of a messy process. So we've got our leg. Then what you do is you're going to stuff that leg with your polyfill or whatever you're using. And you're going to take your foot, which I haven't shown you how to make yet, the sole of the foot, and that gets placed on the very bottom after it's been stuffed. Then you stitch around to attach the foot to the leg. So you end up with something that looks like that. Now, the steps in making the sole of the foot are similar to the face. The very first step is it's going to create the shape of the, actually it might be a little bit different. I'm going to show you on the icon too. It might be a little bit confusing if I don't show you right on the machine itself. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this and then load the sole of the feet. Oh, I don't have it on here. Okay, so I will just explain it then. So the first thing it does is it's going to stitch the outline. And actually I have I'll show you in a second. It's going to do the outline of the foot on your stabilizer. And then you can lay your vinyl or whatever, your larger piece of fabric down onto that outline, and it will stitch out the cut line. Then it's going to do a outline of the pads, and then stop for you to place the fabric down, like in my case, the black vinyl, and it will stitch that down. It will not do a satin stitch at the very end because it's just a kind of raw edge applique. It's not a satin stitch on the bottom of the foot. So that's how the very bottom of the foot is made. And then it is placed on your leg once it's stuffed and sewn on there. So it looks like this particular piece I did in my metal hoop. I absolutely love my metal hoop, and particularly if I am doing something with vinyl or leather, it just holds it in place really nicely and it doesn't make marks on the vinyl or leather. So you can kind of see in this picture that there was, let's see if maybe I can draw the outline here. Here's the foot itself. That was done first. Then the template of the pads was done, and I placed the black vinyl down, and then it stitched the black vinyl down. And the last step is you just cut really close to the pads. And this is just a foot going the other way so I could fit both of them on there. So that's the foot. Oh, and this is what the leg looks like after it's stitched in the hoop, with two pieces of fur right sides together. Before you cut it out, you cut it out along here and then along that outer edge. So that's the leg. Then the arms are a little bit, there's a few different steps to the arms. I hope everybody's still with me. There haven't been any questions. That makes me feel like I'm talking to myself. I hope that's not the case. I hope you all are are enjoying this and thinking, man, I want to make that bunny. But at any rate, I'll just forge ahead, whether there's anybody on the other end, and hopefully there are. And of course, this will be recorded and placed on YouTube and on Facebook. So for later dates, if you decide you can't do the bunny now, you can watch this 6 months from now and make the bunny for a gift, for a baby gift. Make a really nice baby gift. So back to the arm. So let me find my arm piece here. Got multiple body parts here. Okay, so we end up with, a cutout piece that looks kind of like a kidney bean. And the way it is stitched out, I'm going to go over that one. So I think this one is the one that wasn't as straightforward to me. So I'm going to go into stitch out. Now I'm in ghost mode, so it shows you that the very first step, it's going to do the outline, and that could be on your stabilizer itself, or you could have your fabric already down right sides up. Then the next step is going to actually stitch down your furry fabric. Then the very next step, it's going to start stitching down these pads. So after you stitch down the outline of, or the actually stitch down your furry fabric, then you're going to put your fabric down for the pads. And in the very last step, it will, after you cut it out, it's going to finish off those pads. Now, it's not actually it's this almost last step. Then after you have the pads in place, you're going to put a layer of furry fabric right sides down, and then this is going to complete them so that when you're done, you have the wrong sides out and you turn it right sides out and you have a three-dimensional arm. And I'll show you a picture that will probably illustrate that a little bit better. Just bear with me for a moment here. Might as well show you what I'm paging through here. This is back to the directions. Okay, so this shows you on the left how once the pads are done on the hand or the arm, then you're going to lay another piece of fur right over it. And then it will stitch down the outer border. So you'll end up with something that looks like this once you cut it out. And then you'll have your little arm, and there will be a gap in the stitching. You'll turn that right sides out. Okay, so I have a question. What stabilizer did you use in the metal hoop for the base of the foot? Well, good question. Because I was stitching on vinyl and in the metal hoop, I did not use any stabilizer at all. Now, that's not to say that I don't use stabilizer with vinyl and the metal hoop, but I knew that the design was not very stitch intensive. It's all just straight stitches, and I know that those magnets hold that vinyl in place really well. So for a simple design on vinyl in the metal hoop, I typically will not use stabilizer. I don't feel that I need it. If I were doing like a lot of satin stitches, then I would think about doing it. But the metal hoop, that's another advantage. A lot of times, you can, at least with vinyl, you can get away without using stabilizer at all for straight stitches. So I've turned my arm right sides out, and then you stuff it. Again, it looks kind of like a furry kidney bean, right? You stuff it, and you've got a little hole here that you need to stitch closed. So we've got a bunch of body parts here, bunny parts, and once you get to this point, you do need to put the back and the front together, although I haven't made the back yet. I want to show you that. So the bunny back, I'm going to go back to my icon 2 and load the bunny back and show you how you could add a label to personalize it. So this is the back side. Obviously, there's the little tail. And again, it's going to stitch like the other parts, in that it's going to do the outline first. That could be on the stabilizer. It could be on your furry piece of fabric, right sides up. The second band is going to actually stitch the around the perimeter of the bunny back, as well as put the darts in and the template for the tail. And then the next one will be after you've placed the tail fabric down, and it will stitch that down in place for you. So one tip on the tail, when I made this bunny, I did do it in a contrasting fabric, but I did not stuff it with anything. Then when I did this one, you can see that it's more three-dimensional. I stuffed some of that silky polyfill in there, and then stitched around the outside. And I like the way that looks better. It's just got more dimension to it. So that's an idea of something you could do. Now, if you wanted to put a label on, you would go back to Embroidery Edit. You would do it before you stitch anything out. So I'm going to go back to Embroidery Edit so we can add a label. So we have our bunny back there. If I wanted to add, I used a vinyl backing on it because I knew that the fonts would need to be small because it's a smallish project. So I didn't want them to get lost in the fur. So I put a little piece of thin white vinyl behind it, an applique. So the way that you do that is you can make appliques right on the Creative Icon or the Creative Icon 2, and go into Applique Creator. And the first thing you need to do is to choose the shape of the applique that you want to create. So I go up to this icon with the star and the circle. That's my shape menu. And I'm going to choose a circle. And I'm going to close this window by touching that icon. Now, that's way, way too big. I'm going to go into, I could just make it smaller by touching a corner and dragging it. But I'm actually going to go into Edit Applique because I want to make it an oval. Right now, the dimensions are locked, so if I make it smaller, it's always going to stay a circle. But if I go into my scale button here, turn that on, and unlock it, then I can make this an oval. And just kind of eyeball it to fit it. And if it's close but not right on, you can use these arrows to make more like micro changes. Or I could touch that number, and it's 34.5. I could figure I probably want 36. And if I wanted to make a whole bunch of these and they were all that exact size, I would remember what these dimensions are. And the next time I made the bunny, if I hadn't saved it, I would know exactly how to duplicate it. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to click OK. And I need to deselect it by touching outside of that square. And I'm going to go in. I'm just going to put my grandson's name in the middle. Let's go with, need a smaller font. I don't know if 20 is going to fit, but we'll give it a try. So his name is Elias. And I'm going to just close this so we can see what it looks like. Move that up. And that's not bad. I mean, if I might want to go back and make it smaller, use a smaller font. If I had a smaller font, then I could do things like maybe make this a little curved. and stick it in there. Well, it still fits. You can spread out the letters if you think they're too crowded. There's a number of special effects you can make, but I think that looks pretty good. So when I'm done with it, I close the typewriter and then deselect. And now I have that. It will stitch out after everything else because I added it after everything else. And I can check that by going up here to my layers, and I'll see that my bunny back stitches first, then my applique, and then the name. If I had, say, made a mistake and I put the name before the applique, you wouldn't want that because the applique would cover the name, but you can always change the order by touching and dragging and dropping. But that we would actually want it to stitch out like this so that the applique does not cover the name. So that's how you could add a label. You know, I didn't necessarily have to add the applique, but I just felt like it would be more readable by doing that. Okay, so then once you have your parts, your pieces all together, you will sew your darts. And then once you sew the dart, let's show this pretty well. So I've got my dart sewn there. You'll trim them a little bit. And with the body itself, I seem to have misplaced my, I misplaced my body, the front part of my bunny body. Well, you would put them together, front, right sides together. And with the body, you're just going to stitch all the way around, leaving a hole at the top. Then for the face, that's a little bit more complicated because we got to get the ears in there. You want to have your ears. I'm actually going to show you a better picture here. Let me find the picture in the instructions so you can see what this looks like. So at the very end of the instructions, there are some sewing instructions. Let's see if I can find something that, the one that I'm looking for, that will be helpful for this. Yes. Okay. So when you get your ear done, you're going to do that little seam down at the base of the ear where you're turning it in to make it look like an ear. And here's the way that the body is sewn. And there's the one of the darts sewn, and then you trim it, and a picture of the leg itself with the sole of the foot on there. Then, actually, here's a better picture of making the fringe over the eyelid. I forgot that that's there. So the first picture shows you on the back side cutting where the bobbin thread is. Then on the right side, you take a stylus and or something sharp, and you pull towards you, and those eyelashes will come out, and they're kind of curled on the end, which is kind of nice. Then the bunny ears, once you get them sewn, you're going to sew them onto the face, base them on before you sew the head together. Now, I think it would be very easy to do this backwards. I think a lot of people would think that we want to sew them on like this, like where here's the head. Let's see if I can show this better, where the ear is like that. But you actually don't want to sew them like that. You're going to sew them with the right sides together, the furry parts together. There's the face on this side, because when you have the back of the head sewn together, this is going to flop over like that. Like I'll show you here on the bunny itself that's done. So they were sewn on like this onto the face. And they, when you're sewing the head together, you are going to leave the neck open of the head so that you can stuff it. So the ears will stick in that hole for the neck, but you sew them on with the right sides together on the face, so that when the head is sewn together, they flop over like that and looks like a bunny. So it does show this in the picture here, but I thought showing you on the actual bunny might make it clearer. So that middle picture with the face shows you how the ears will stick in the neck hole. Then once you have all the parts stuffed, you're going to hand sew. And I know that's a dirty word for some people. I kind of like hand sewing, but it is the way this is constructed. You're going to sew the head onto the body, and then the arms onto the body, and the legs onto the body. And with that particular method, the body part, the arms and the legs are very movable. Like I can sit this guy down and his legs will come up, and, you know, so he can sit with his feet up, or, you know, or they can dangle and his arms move around. And, you know, so it makes the body parts, it's a simple technique to have movable body parts. Then the apron itself is pretty straightforward. You do need to do it on some pretty thick water soluble, or use 2 layers, because the strap that goes around the back, that's all thread, you know, so that's all done on the water soluble with a ton of thread. And as well as these parts that, you know, stick out down here, you're gonna need the water soluble. So the first step with the design is it will stitch the outline for this fabric, and then you put the fabric down, and it starts doing all the rest of the stitching. And it does use, it does end up being a really nice design. It's sort of out of focus, but it's little pears and tomatoes and apples, and, you know, then you have the fruit on the front. So it's a cute little apron. So we have 3 minutes left. Any questions? I've had one question today. I hope you're not totally bored, since I only got one question. Either that or I was exceedingly clear. Hopefully it's that case. So I do want to just remind you that this will be placed on YouTube very soon on the PFAFF North America page, and you can certainly view it at a later date, or have tell a friend. We do have another Facebook Live coming up. Oh, it's actually going to be on Wednesday, June 8th. Myself and the other full-time educators will be having our Educator Week in our headquarters in Nashville. And we're going to be going over a number of different things. Talking about our favorite, I think we're going to actually go over our favorite My Sonnet features, other things too, I'm sure. Then Mickey Hudson will be doing a Facebook Live on Thursday, June 16th. So please tune in for Mickey. She's a lot of fun and really knowledgeable. So I'm sure I don't know what her topic is, but I'm sure it'll be great. And we did have a comment that someone said that I was very thorough. Good. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. Okay, so everyone, thank you for joining me today. I know you have a million things that you could be doing, or you could be actually sewing yourself. So thank you for spending the hour with me. I appreciate it. And happy sewing. So I'm going to sign off now. Bye-bye.